I've seen those ChatGPT contracts or those LegalZoom contracts where they used to go in and they're missing provisions or they're very light on terms. I mean, you want things spelled out as much as you possibly can. I choose volunteer projects based on passion. Because when you want to log off and you want to close your laptop for the night or whatever, but you still have that volunteer work to do, that passion is what will keep that laptop open. It is one of those things where sometimes people in the world make it seem far worse than it is, and then you get somebody who does it every day involved, and we try to be as calming as possible.
So Matt, I want you to tell me a story, okay? I want you to think about a client, any client, that said, wow, I should have called you 6 months ago. Can you tell us a story where they called you later than they should have?
So yeah, unfortunately, it's happened in both ways where someone will take positions in emails or whatever, trying to negotiate something themselves, and then they'll come to us and they'll say, "Well, I've already said this." Because once you say it, and certainly once you say it in writing, I'm bound by that. Like I have to deal with that for the rest of the representation. I did have a guy say that he was going to make sure if it was the last thing he did that the other person, and I, without going into specifics, that they suffered, that they made sure. And he put that in an email and then comes to me, he's like, "I got this great case, let's look at all this." And then as we're going through emails, I'm gonna make sure that you suffer. I was like, well, thanks for saying that. I really appreciate that you put me behind the 8 ball. But I had another one, they were already engaged. We already had a representation. I said, you gotta come to me with all of the contracts. Come to me, let me see him. So he doesn't. And then they bypass the contract stage, they start into the actual production stage, and it falls apart. And I'm saying, okay, well, did you sign a contract? Well, no, I didn't sign a contract. Did I look at any of the documents, any of the writings? Nope, didn't look at anything. So we're in a case now, about 1.5 years now, because we didn't have a writing. So it happens both when you represent and before you represent.
That's insane. So let's take this to the next step. We're here in 2026. How many times have you been questioned by somebody that says, but ChatGPT says?
All the time. And we'll get, there is a client of mine who likes to send me, well, what if we do this? And they'll send me, and it's very clearly ChatGPT because it's broken out very well. And you're like, okay, well, I was going to do that, but that's okay. And then you go through it and you explain it and it's perfectly fine, but it's becoming more and more a part of our everyday. Obviously, we can't use ChatGPT in terms of, we can't use it for citations or anything. You've seen the number of AI cases where people will come in and get in trouble for that. But so we don't do it in that manner. We'll do legal research using AI where it'll cut off an hour or two. So you're saving the client money. And so we'll do that from time to time. But yeah, there are a lot of clients who'll come in and here's why don't we take this tactic or this tactic or this tactic. You just respond as you would with anything.
So one big tip from this podcast is ChatGPT never went to law school and it's not registered on the bar. Call your attorney.
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate that.
Matt, you practice in several different areas, a lot in construction and in development. Deals move fast and people like to cut legal corners to save time, or they think they're making more money, and that really can bite you, can it?
It can, and you talk about the construction industry in general. I've seen those ChatGPT contracts or those LegalZoom contracts where they used to go in, and they'd print them out, and they're missing provisions or they're very light on terms. I mean, you want things spelled out as much as you possibly can, and you don't have that in those contracts. And so people will use that AI, they'll send those contracts just to cut the corners, just to do that. And then when it comes time to enforce the agreement, you're stuck with it. And that's where you're at.
So this ChatGPT or LegalZoom or other things like that, they might technically produce legal documents, but they could be the very minimal definition of what's required and not give you all the other stuff that years of law school and practice taught you to incorporate.
Well, and the good part, so I'm a hybrid where I do transactional and I do litigation. So I am drafting agreements to either protect you from litigation or to make sure that you have avenues to go after someone else. And that's the benefit of kind of operating on both sides of that, is your issue spotting is different. So when we're litigating, I can tell if the other side tries to enforce a contract, I can tell that they've used that LegalZoom or ChatGPT or whatever to produce the contract. So we can see that going in. So, but otherwise, if you've had an attorney draft the contract, I've had a couple cases where I'm like, okay, this is awful, but I'm stuck. And we have to deal with the facts and the contract as they are.
And these AI mechanisms or other mechanisms, they don't give a client protection. Like there's protective mechanisms if you're an attorney and you mess up and you seriously mess up. The client does have some remedies.
Sure.
But if they use one of these other things, there's really no remedies. You can't sue ChatGPT for giving you bad legal advice.
No, not generally. And because you can't, it's kind of at your own risk. You've assumed the risk that this is an AI that's constantly learning. And I'm going to assume, I haven't read them all, but that there's something in the terms and conditions somewhere of the AI and your agreement to use it that is saying you can't sue us for this. You can't depend on our advice, so on and so forth.
That's fascinating, and so many people. That's exactly how they're transacting business. And it's not the 500 that make the difference. It's that one person. It's that one case. It's that one litigant that causes an issue.
Yeah, and it's no matter how many times it works out the right way, there's always that risk. You're risking that it's going to go poorly, and you're not going to have the right protections. So that's why, listen, if you draft the contract, you say, I just want somebody to QC it, I just want somebody to review it, just call a lawyer. Have them do some sort of limited engagement for that so that you can get them to review the contract and make sure that it has all the necessary elements before you sign it.
That's awesome. So in medicine, you always hear the thing, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And you experience that. I'm sure you've dealt with many startup companies or many active companies. So what would you say is the difference between a scrappy startup and a, protected business? Where's that line where somebody starts up and they need to make sure that they covered X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, so I've dealt with people who have been involved in whatever industry you are. Because when you're working with startups or you're working with smaller companies, they come from all industries. And so I've worked with clients where they will have experience in that industry. And so they think, all right, I know what I'm doing, I'm going there. And they won't build in those protections. What you want when you're a protected business is you're going to want the agreements in place, the correct agreements in place, whether you're employing individuals or doing 1099s or doing whatever, you have that hammered down. You have your registration, your operating agreement, things like that you can put in there and say, okay, we've got everything in place. And then your vendor contracts. If you are a supplier to others, you need those. If you're receiving supplies from others, you need those too, just to make sure you're protected. That's really what it is building those walls up so that you have a defense. Because in reality, the difference is that you've realized that there might be a risk down the road that you're going to get sued, and you choose to protect yourself early, as opposed to just kind of living on the edge and making sure that you're living on the edge and not making sure you're protected. There you go.
There you go.
I got it.
And so you do preventative services. Like most people think, oh, I'm about to get in legal trouble. Well, now I need to get an attorney. The right time to call an attorney is long before you're ever in trouble, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and there'll be that edge where, parties are starting to fight, or maybe there's a lawyer on the other side or whatever. Before we do a demand, we will generally ask if they do have an attorney, we just call the attorney, try to work it out, because you don't always have to. There's steps, there's off ramps to each dispute. So we'll do that when we get into, there might be a dispute down the road, or we'll start at the very beginning and say, just from experience, I was in-house for 8 years. And the company I was with started at 125 employees and grew to 550. And by the time I left, I was the head of the legal department and all that. So I really saw that growth and how that protection looks. And so I try to instill that in clients, make sure that they're protected as well.
That's excellent. And can I assume that it's typically cheaper to catch you before a legal issue than after something has actually launched?
Definitely. It'll impact everything from, what the retainer is, the scope of the engagement, so on and so forth. And I have many clients who are it's kind of a general counsel services where we help them start the company, get everything built up, and then we're just there in case anything does happen. But once they happen, I know I've drafted the agreements, I've done that, so we know them already. And we don't have to. We have that institutional knowledge. We don't have to go back and start over.
And that's probably the difference between a few thousands that start up when nothing's wrong and tens or hundreds of thousands if something goes really wrong.
Yeah, and if you protect, generally when I draft an agreement, we know it pretty well, so you don't have to worry about not having that, like I said, institutional knowledge. You kind of go back to, all right, I drafted this. I know where the holes are. Hopefully there are none, but I know where they are, and I'm going to make sure that we're protected.
Okay. So attorneys can have any kind of undergraduate major.
Sure.
They can start in accounting and decide to be an attorney. They can just start in medicine and decide to be an attorney. Or in your case, fine arts.
Yeah.
So how do you go from being fine arts? Like, what got you interested in that? Were you always meant to be an attorney and this was just a layover class? Or was it, no, I was going to be, the next Justin Bieber, and I started that path?
Yeah. So I told this story last night. I was watching television as a 9-year-old. I turned on Mrs. Doubtfire and I saw Robin Williams. From that point, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an actor. And I thought in undergrad, I was like, I was joking around with Piz, I'm going to go out to LA, I'm going to win 4 Oscars and do all this. And it was very easy, and then you get out. The reason that I liked acting was you can impact hundreds of people, thousands of people within seconds. One moment in a show changes and everybody's laughing or everybody's crying or doing whatever. Whereas with the law, you're impacting individuals. And so I realized in between, I was saving to go to LA. I realized in between there that I wanted to have that individualized impact. Nothing wrong with having the group impact. That's great. But I wanted to have the individualized impact, develop the relationship, and then help that person, help build the business or do whatever I can to help that person. Okay.
So a little research on you. Well, we might drop a bombshell here, but how many people know that they have an attorney that's been on VH1?
So not a lot. And I swear I can't find it. If anybody ever sees it, let me know.
Tell us about the experience. Like, what did you do? What happened there? So obviously it was before law school, right?
Yeah. It was well before law school. I think I was 19 and I've been singing since I was 5 and I was acting since I was 9. So I went to audition for a show called In Search of the Partridge Family, and it was on VH1. And I made it to the finals in Orlando. And I have never seen it. I've never seen the actual show. I was on the national commercial, I was all that, but I couldn't find it. And we got hit by a hurricane, lost power, and I couldn't, I could never find it. I still have searched for it. I've done all that, but that was actually, Emma Stone started there. She's clearly in the room with me because she was in the Orlando final. I don't remember. I wish I had paid more attention at that time. But I was focusing on singing and doing all that stuff.
So somewhere in the zeitgeist of the universe is a video of you on VH1.
Exactly. Somewhere. It was a great experience. I just can't find the video.
So we challenge the listeners here today. If you can find the video, drop it in the comments, please. We will share the heck out of it for you.
Yeah, great.
But we have to get it over to Matt.
Yeah. Please.
So do these acting skills, storytelling skills, communication skills that most artists or most performers have, has that aided you in your legal career?
Sure. And one obviously expected way is that public speaking becomes a little easier because you've done it. And all of the things that go with that in terms of breath control and diction and everything. So, I mean, that's because that's what they train you to do. And then in terms of building in front of a judge or a jury or whatever, the right types of arguments and inflections to make. So that's the obvious one. But then the thing that I didn't realize until much later is when you're working on a script, you are taking a script as an actor that Ian McKellen, Denzel Washington, Ben Kingsley, all these, just from Shakespeare, that all these guys have done before. Helen Mirren, she's absolutely fantastic. And you've done these things that they're doing, and you have to do it differently, and you have to realize that you're not going to replace that person. The same thing flows with statutory interpretation. Statutes have been around for a long time. They are getting modified, obviously. But you have to read and find that new interpretation of that statute, if you can, to try to make an argument, protect your client. So it is a little bit of an unanticipated positive.
So, real question is, in the courtroom, are you better than or worse than Perry Mason with your dramatic pauses or reveals?
I don't know. I would love to say better, but there's no way to know. He was fantastic, and obviously you want to be as good as that, just from the dramatic side. But yeah, I'll do my best.
I'm having a little fun with you.
No, that's great. That's great.
Most business owners, they really wait till something goes wrong, and we kind of talked about that. But they wait till something goes wrong before they call the attorney. Yeah. There's a little bit of nervousness to calling an attorney. People are kind of afraid. You're just a husband and a dad and a community member like any of the rest of us, right? But people, when they find out you're an attorney, they're probably a little afraid, but they're afraid to call you until the legal problem. Why do you think that is?
Just the unknown. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not everything, especially when we talk to clients, the situation that they are in feels like, and it has to, I totally understand it. It feels like it's the first time it's happening to anyone in the world. And in reality, a lot of these things are, oh, I've seen this before. Oh, I've done this before. And I remember as a young lawyer, I was watching a partner of mine, and he got a phone call from a counsel and just rattled off case law statutes. Oh, this happens, this happens, this happens. And I always wonder if I'd be able to do it. And the longer you go in your career, the more it's like, yes, this happens all the time. Don't worry about it. But it's having that. It's like when you go to the doctor, you think something's pretty scary and you don't want to tell them about it. Most of the time, the good doctors will tell you, okay, this is normal. Don't worry about this. And they'll give you some sort of long-term plan or whatnot. And that's really what attorneys do. That's what we strive to do, is make the heightened moments seem normal so that we lower your stress level while simultaneously defending you.
Okay, so you might have clients that come to you thinking they're in a world of legal hurt, and you end up finding out after an hour conversation that there's absolutely nothing to worry about.
In maybe 5 minutes. Only because it's one of those things where you'll get somebody will call, and most of the time, people will threaten the other side before I ever get involved.
Yeah.
So for instance, there was a guy who didn't speak English, or English was his second language. He spoke very broken English, and the guy next door had just badgered him until he signed a contract. And then the guy finally was like, I don't want to sell my house. I'm done. I don't want to sell. I want to back out. The guy came over and told him that he was going to go to jail, that a breach of contract is some criminal offense. We're going to have him arrested. And within 5 seconds, you're like, don't worry about that. He's not going to arrest you for breaking a contract. That's not how that works. So it is one of those things where sometimes people in the world make it seem far worse than it is. And then you get somebody who does it every day involved. And we try to be as calming as possible.
I can only imagine how much peace or relaxation that client of yours had when they found out, no, we're not going to jail. No, we're not doing this. And this might be just trivial.
Yeah, it was. And we got it handled.
That's incredible. A call, an inexpensive fee, basically, just to put you ease of mind. It's not $20,000 to answer that question.
No, it's not. And it's, I mean, obviously we had to negotiate a little bit because the other guy got counsel and everything like that, but it was handled very quickly. Yeah, it was one of the more positive results where it was a very quick, like, please don't threaten my client with jail. That's not going to happen.
So, Matt, you work for a major national law firm,
Sure.
For Porter Wright,
Yeah.
right? They have many specialties. You have many specialties, but it's a demanding career. You still make time for acting or being in plays, and you do community work. I believe you sit on a board with United Way or a committee with United Way.
I do. I'm the chair of the Admiral Society Advisory Council. And so I work with United Way Suncoast that way.
And so tell me, how do you choose what you say yes and no to? Because you must get all the invites or have all the options, but you have a family sitting at home. You probably have plays or sports or other things to do too, and life to live, and probably have clients that say, hey, why aren't you working 24/7? So how do you pick, yes, I want to go to this networking event. No, I can't make that, even though I would love to go.
It's passion and it's people. So I actually talked about this again last night as well. I choose volunteer projects based on passion. So many times when I was younger, the ideas would present themselves. So the opportunities would present themselves. Hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And the idea of going and being on a board was appealing. Oh, that's great. That sounds wonderful. And then you realize it has to be about passion, because when you want to log off and you want to close your laptop for the night or whatever, but you still have that volunteer work to do, that passion is what will keep that laptop open, as opposed to going and watching TV or doing whatever you're going to do. So it's that, and each one of I'm the board chair for Stageworks Theater, and I'm on the United Way Admiral Society Advisory Council. I'm the chair there, work with a nonprofit as their board secretary called Holiday Hoops and Arts. And all of them center around the arts, or they center around assisting, children who are underprivileged, families who are underprivileged. And that really, when I've spoken about this at the United Way, but we were paycheck to paycheck and probably, in the red all the time when I was growing up. And so I'm only where I am because of the generosity of others. So when I get tired, when I don't want to do that extra push, because that's when you do it. You do a lot of that work at night. When I need that extra push, I think about what it was like as a 6-year-old to find out that my family wasn't doing okay. And I don't want other people to experience that to the extent that I can help.
That's incredible. You have such a demanding schedule and you still put even more time in. And I can tell that you had passion for acting, you had passion for law, and you have passion for your family, and you have passion for your community. So I definitely see that in how you reflect and answer. So that's amazing. If you were running a business like you were building a house, where do you think people forget to put the legal foundation?
So it's the operating agreement. The number of times that people will come to me. So if I'm building a business with you, and you and me want to do whatever, just pick a business. You and I are friends, so a lot of people will come in and say, I trust this person, we're going to do great together. We're not going to have an operating agreement. We're not going to have the base document that determines how the parties interact with one another. And they don't do it because they either don't want to incur the cost. They may not even know it exists. Some people come to me, they're like, well, I filed it with Sunbiz. I put it on the Department of State website, all of that. And they don't realize that they need that document. That is the foundational document for how you do business and how the parties interact, what your rights are, what your obligations are, what your percentages of ownership are. Kind of important to see how much you have in the business. But if you don't have that, everything else can fall down very quickly because you can be doing great as a company. And if the owners don't agree on something and it starts to fall apart, there's the foundation right there because the people are the foundation of that business. It's going to fall apart very quickly. And so in terms of, obviously there's the insurance, you got to have all of those types of things ticked and tied and make sure that you've got your contracts in place. But without that operating agreement, you're dealing with internal potential problems and it can cave in as opposed to someone trying to attack you from the outside where you have to defend because there's not a lot of defense from an internal problem like that.
And it's great to hear you. You're not litigate. You're prepare. Yeah. Avoid litigation where you can.
Yeah. I was in-house, like I said, for 8 years and I was judged on how much legal spend I could save. So I got very good. Otherwise, you're not justifying your salary. So I got very good at cutting those legal costs by making sure that you anticipate what's coming and that you either procedure, policy, or agreement, just get rid of that if you can.
Okay. Well, Matt, we have the fun part of the show here.
Let's do it.
We have Tommy's Toolbox with Tommy's Toolbox.
All right.
Okay. So there are a series of questions in here. I don't even know what they are, right? And they're all goofy, I'm told. So I'm going to open the box. And what I want you to do is pull out one strip of paper, hand it to me, and I'm going to ask you the question.
Let's do it.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right. I'll pick one that I can't see. There you go.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, it's a long one. It's multi-part and it's essay.
That's fine.
Ooh, okay. What's a totally normal thing everybody likes, but you secretly hate?
Wow. So I'm going to get a lot of flack for saying this, I guess, because of where we live. So it didn't used to be this, but it's going to the beach. And I will tell you, I love when I'm there. And I love relaxing once I get there. I have 3 kids and it is no longer fun because you have to get them in the car and then get them there, get them set up. And meanwhile, they're trying to drown themselves. They're running towards the ocean. They're trying to run away. We had to cross, we went down to on the way to Honeymoon Island and that causeway area. And we went to cross the street. And you would cross at a crosswalk. And my 4-year-old, just on a whim, he's like, oh, I'm going to go. And had we not had a hold of him, that's it, ball game. And so it's those types of things. It's like, it's so unpredictable now. So yeah, going to the beach now it's become this task and this chore. Now, if I go with my wife, completely different story. We'll just relax and do all that. But with the family, everybody else loves going to the beach. Everybody's like, go to the beach. Great. I'm not going to do that right now. I don't want to do that. Maybe when the kids get older. So yeah. But Daddy loves you guys. Yeah.
Awesome. Just a closing question for the audience. I want you to imagine you're a young entrepreneur listening to this podcast right now. What questions would you ask an attorney? Think about those. Write them down. Reach out to a qualified attorney to answer your questions. We've had Matthew DePasquale on today, apparently VH1 superstar, litigator at Porter Wright, in various construction efforts. If you want to find Matt's information, we're going to drop it down in the description below. You can get in touch with him at his firm. You can set consultations. And if Matt doesn't handle that type of case, their firm is so diversified, usually he can give you an internal resource. And if not, he's completely happy to give you an external resource so that you have the best representation that you deserve.